Hey everyone, this is Josue from the Nine Show Podcast. And if you guys are enjoying this content so far, I'd really appreciate it if you guys would like and subscribe on Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or wherever else you might be tuning in. If you guys feel like someone else could benefit from what I have to say here, please go ahead and share with your friends and family and help this podcast to keep spreading. And if you guys are feeling really generous, I would also be really appreciative of this, but please consider becoming a Patreon on my Patreon page. That would definitely help me to keep producing this content for you guys, bigger and better every time and more consistently. And it's something that I really think will help me to grow and would help me to dedicate more time to actually doing this, which is something that I really want to do, but always seem to struggle actually doing. So please go ahead and do that if you guys are feeling up to it. Also, go ahead and follow me on my social medias. May it be on Instagram at the9_show, at Facebook at the9pod. Everything as far as all my channels and all my networks are located at the9showpodcast.myportfolio.com. That'll be linked at the bottom of this episode. So you guys can go ahead and do that. And I want to give thank you to everyone who's been tuning in so far, and keep tuning in because we got more content coming to you pretty soon. Thanks. Okay. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Nine Show Podcast, and we are finally here. It is the first episode of season 2, and it's been quite a journey so far, and we're nowhere near finishing, and we're gonna keep going, and with the same amount of energy and the same amount of pace that we've been going so far. So, if you guys like that little mix that you guys heard at the beginning of the episode, that was put together by me, and it's leading right into the main subject for today, which is synthwave, which is a popular genre of music, or perhaps it wouldn't be. It might be too soon to say popular. I know it's very popular underground. It's kind of like at this point, it's kind of like what trance and EDM was back in the early '90s, into the mid '90s and to the early 2000s to a certain extent, like where it was very popular underground, but it hasn't quite reached like full like capacity of popularity that it is now. And EDM right now is one of the the top genres. I see synthwave becoming one of those genres pretty soon, just because of the fact, and we'll get into that as we go into the episode about the fact that it's been used in movies and stuff like that. But it's gonna get there probably within a couple years, I think. But I want to give a shout out to Royalty Free Planet, from which all those songs featured in that mix came from. And what's awesome about Royalty Free Planet is, as its namesake is, it's all royalty free music, and it's actually not just your generic like YouTube sound library songs, which a lot of times people that are looking for legitimate music have trouble, which I know I do, because since I'm a student filmmaker, very much a budget filmmaker, yeah, sound is something that's really important and really adds depth to your work, but it's hard to find interesting and compelling songs that you can use that are actually worth putting in. And Royalty Free Planet does a really good job of helping to solve that issue. They have songs from a lot of indie creators, but a lot of actually relatively well-known creators in their own scenes. You have songs from Home, you have songs from the Fat Rat, you have songs from Scott Buckley, and these are all quality music content creators who have generously donated their time and their talent to creating music which is open to the public, which can be used in commercial work, which can be used in student work, and can be used in any other type of work without fear of repercussion. Just follow the appropriate channels. They always link their Creative Commons license steps in their songs. That way you can go ahead and use them without fear of repercussions. So I would really encourage anyone that is producing low budget or no budget or just any budget types of projects to check out Royalty Free Planet. They have genres in like we're talking today in synthwave, future synth, cinematic, horror, hip hop, and at least 7 other genres. So you have your pick of the field as far as you want to do. But jumping into the main content, so for anyone that doesn't know, because actually I relatively found about this pretty, wasn't that long ago, and I guess I had heard this, but I just didn't know what it was, didn't know what to call it, and essentially what synthwave is, it's known by a couple different names. People call it future synth, retro wave. They call it outrun too, because there was this game that was released a while back called Outrun, and it had a soundtrack that was very reminiscent of this type of music, so it kind of became synonymous with the genre itself. But it's the core of synthwave is that it's influenced heavily by the 1980s, the aesthetic of the 1980s, the sound of the 1980s. If you can think of music by Phil Collins, uh, Prince, just any of those popular 80s groups, Hall and Oates, who's someone else, probably like just a bunch of different of like synth artists and stuff. Oh, Imagination, that's another group that used this type of sound, but it's very heavily influenced. And then it kind of, a big theme of it is that it kind of created a version of the 80s that never existed. And what's kind of ironic is that the people that like it most of the time are people from my generation, the later millennials jumping into like the Generation Zers. But we never lived in the 80s, but somehow listening to this music kind of makes you feel nostalgic for that time. And even then, that this version of that time never existed, but in our minds it feels like it could very much be. But this was first kind of started coming out in the mid 2000s, and the genre was developed in niche communities on the internet, and it started to reach wider popularity in the 2010s, and it was very much bolstered by can you guess what movie it was? Drive. Yeah, that's it's back, guys. But yeah, Drive had a very heavy synthwave inspired soundtrack produced by Kovinsky and Guy Manuel de Homem Cristo, which actually, if you guys are well versed on your EDM, then you'll know that he's one half of like the immensely popular legends of EDM. Daft Punk. He's the guy with the mask that has kind of like the longer visor. He's a shorter guy, but yeah, like it's come out in movies. That was the very first movie I think that actually brought it out to the mainstream, and it's been featured in a couple other smaller movies. I think the next biggest one that they actually featured it in was in Kong Fury, which is a 2015 movie. If you guys haven't seen it, actually I haven't seen it, and I've kind of neglected to do it, and I really should, because I've heard that it's very much built around this aesthetic, this sound. And I think part two actually is supposed to be coming out in 2020, and it's going to be starring Michael Fassbender. So, I mean, he's a really good actor. So if you guys are going to be interested, probably might be a good time to watch the first one. That way, you guys are ready to jump into the second one. I'll definitely be doing that pretty soon myself. Um, but synthwave, it's like very retro futuristic, in which I was saying it's kind of dealing with the a period of time which is kind of like set in the 80s, but in the 80s that never actually existed, and it's it very much emulates the 1980s science fiction style, the action and the horror media style, and it's really much cyberpunk. So I guess um, if you guys can think of Blade Runner, if you guys have seen Blade Runner, if you guys haven't seen Blade Runner, do yourself a favor and go watch it. That is a must-see movie, I would say, before you die. Um, it has that sound, the sound that was created by Vangelis, and sort of the sort of heavy synth, sort of kind of set to the rain in the dark. Uh, may it be through like I might not necessarily get the names of the tracks right, but the main uh Blade Runner crawl music, the music that you hear, I think it's called the digital blues, and then the love theme, which is paired like with the really famous like saxophone kind of neo noir type sound. That's all like kind of like the very much precursor to like all of this, and you could see like this was the sound, because every time I feel, and actually here's the thing like about about this genre is that it makes you feel very emotional. And it's not necessarily in a bad way, I guess. The thing is that it's so widespread that you can find just about a track in any emotion, I guess. it, and the strongest emotion, I guess, is if you could, if you call it an emotion, it gives you the sense of a strong nostalgia. Every time you listen to it, it gives you like a really strong sense of nostalgia. It can make you, like I said, it can make you feel sad. It can make you feel kind of mad or happy. It just really just depends. And actually, Blade Runner, every time that I watch that movie, I definitely feel like a certain emotional, uh, a certain emotional rise. And the way I describe it is that the music in Blade Runner is almost like its own character. Like it's so complex. The way that it moves through the movements and just the notes and everything. Like it kind of flows like in the in the digital blues, it's it is what it is. Yeah, it's like a very kind of sad, sort of kind of bluey, and then it's set in, the world of Blade Runner is set always at night. It's raining most of the time, so it kind of fits with that. The love theme, like compared with that neo noir saxophone I was talking about, it sounds is a very sexy sound. You could really, I'm not gonna spoil the movie, but you could really feel the scene, and what's going on in the scene when they play that. There's also it's not the official name of the song, but it's like the monologue in the rain, like where Rucker Hauer's character gives at the end of the movie. It kind of that's probably one of the more famous ones too, 'cause it also has that movement, like, and again, not to spoil too much of the movie, but the villain kind of gives, this kind of staunch villain kind of gives his monologue, and even though he is the villain, you kind of feel for him in that moment, what he's saying compared with the music, and the visuals. It kind of all comes together and creates like a really interesting atmosphere, and a really interesting like feeling that's all wrapped in, helped by this very synthy, futuristic, retro-futuristic sound. And when I'm saying about, you can find something in every genre, I'm really bummed out that I can't play these songs for you guys due to copyright. But if I had the ability to, one of my favorite artists in this genre is La Cassette, and I actually just discovered them not too long ago. But it only took like a day, and I'm already addicted to like their to the stuff that they're putting out there, because it's like they got everything that you need. If you are like I guess you're in love with someone that it's not, possibly it's not living you back, then you throw on the song Arms of Mine, and I'm not gonna do justice to his voice right now, but he has this really kind of silky low voice, and he's like, I see the rain falling down on your lips. So it's like you got that. If you want to feel like you're the king of the world, then you throw on the Radio Secret to My Success remix, and pump that when you're walking outside on a sunny day and you feel like you rule the street. If you if you just want to feel cool, then you throw on Tonight, which is kind of a poppy like synth pop ballad, and again, you'll feel like you just run the world. So you got everything that you need to or any type of song that you're looking for, any type of feel, you got it in synthwave, which I think is really awesome that they've been able to spread their types and spread their different feels across the genre. That way they're not just singular, because yeah, like there's very like just like extremes. I feel what I do feel is that the one thing that they all have in common is that they're very cinematic. Or at least the majority that I've heard. There's a song called Noir by the group GUNSHIP, and it starts off with like kind of an intro crawl, talking about sort of like nuclear holocaust and stuff, and then it leads into the song, which is a really good song. And I'm gonna try to link all these songs that I mentioned here in the description of the episode. That way you guys can go check it out. And it's really cool. And again, I might not do. And this is actually it's cool because it's narrated by John Carpenter, who is if you guys for the movie buffs out there, you'll know that he's the director of The Thing. He directed the first Halloween. Very critically acclaimed and commercially acclaimed director. And he's like, it opens with the strong synth like and then he's like, I'm recording this because this is the last thing that I might ever say. And then it starts off, and then it's like, the city I once knew is teetering on the edge of radioactive oblivion, and it's a 300,000-degree baptism by nuclear fire. I'm sorry, we had it coming. And yeah, so it's cool. I mean, and it sounds kind of nerdy, honestly, but yeah, it's a good song though. I jam out to that pretty often. Um, he's actually and I can't quite tell you the names of the albums, because like he actually was an early adopter of this style like since a while back. I think he's been using a similar style um, to this, going all the way back to Escape from New York, which is one of his more famous movies too. He has a couple more, and I think he's actually produced and composed his own synthwave albums, even in the modern day. I don't exactly have the names for those, but he's a big part of the genre. I mean, more so than just being part of the movie, because he is a composer outside of being a film director and producer. And actually, as of today, he's one of the like premier producers of this music and the premier advocates of this music. So actually, it's a lot of the genre owes, its progression to him and what he's been able to accomplish with it. And yeah, like I haven't found, a synthwave song that I just don't flat out like there's just so many different people for, like I said, for so many different feels. uh One of the essential albums I would say would be Hotline Miami, which it's also the name of the game, which was kind of like Outrun in a way, kind of the same style. Hotline Miami, Miami Nights 1984 is one of those tracks. Early Summer Drive. I think there's one called Late Summer Drive as well. There's The Elevator of Love. There's not in this same album, but Tommy's Outrun, Tommy Flying, Crockett Searching, Jordan F Ready for the Night, Jordan F A Chance. There's Power Glove, Power Core. Just about anything by Perturbator. Just about anything by I mean, I already mentioned him, but just about anything by Jordan F. Everything by La Cassette, because La Cassette is like, it's my favorite, and I personally think they're probably one of the best right now. I really like their voice, because I was saying, the way they make music and the way they produce songs, it's very like it has the general synthwave sound, but combined with the main singer's voice, like it just adds another dimension to it. It's kind of like I don't even know like who I would compare him to. It's kind of like mm, Yeah, I guess it's like, the this might not be a good comparison, but I'm thinking like you could think like Martin Vandross or like Barry White, but it's different though. I mean, kind of like not quite as low and not quite as, not quite as in the genres there, and it's definitely good for the synthwave genre. He's able to hit. I mean, he has like he doesn't necessarily sing high, but he sings a very broad range within the lower tones. Uh, which yeah, I've always liked that type of singing voice. I just find it cool. So that's why I feel like perhaps I have really high praises for their work and what they've been able to produce in synthwave. There's if you guys are looking for content that's gonna be able to teach you more on this than what I've actually been able to tell you about here, I would really recommend that you guys go watch there are two YouTube documentaries. Shout out to these guys, for putting out pretty two pretty good pieces of content. The first one is Hotline Miami and the Rise of Synthwave by Michael Saba, and the second one is Synthwave by Vostok. And in both of those, they kind of go into like their personal stories, and they're both interesting personal stories, and they kind of go into like the impact that synthwave had on them, and how I mean, like in the case of also Vlad, he explains that how the as synthwave actually played a really big part because he was living in a communist and then post-communist regime, and I think he wasn't quite in Russia, but he was in a country in and around that area, and how synthwave essentially helped bolster kind of like the underground movement that kind of was going towards more of a modern kind of, I guess, westernized sound and sort of zeitgeist. And Michael Saba actually, years later after, said revolution took place, he goes and explains how he discovered um, synthwave in those same areas. I think he actually was in Russia at the time, and he discovered synthwave through. I think he played. I think he played Hotline Miami, the video game, and he was struck by um, that sort of that indie sound, which like the game in and itself was like all right, but what really struck him specifically was the soundtrack, and that's what actually made it memorable for him. And I think that was at a time because that was in 2005. I think that was in a time like only 5 years before the United States would actually see it. After Drive would come out in 2011, so it was just about 5 6 years before he got to discover it and brought back news of it actually when because he had moved to Russia for a job, I believe, and he came back with that experience and kind of spread it and started making his content that chronicled sort of what synthwave was. And I feel like there's just so much more to talk about. There, the the I kind of covered the history as it is. It's because it's relatively new. There's not there's not that many things that have happened yet. Like I said, I'm predicting that it's about to jump off. Like we need another big movie because even though Drive in a way is a cult classic, it didn't quite get the theater release that it should have had in my opinion, because like I said, I have 2 episodes on Drive already, and I've sang its praises and I'll keep singing the praises. I have friends that tell me I'm crazy for liking that movie, but screw them. Because no, and you know what, I'm just kidding, I love you guys, but I like that movie. It's one of my top 5 favorite movies, and I like it. And one of the big things was the soundtrack. And the thing is, like when I heard the soundtrack in the movie at first, I didn't know what synthwave was. 'Cause I remember I watched it right about when it came out, back in, or no, I take that back. Actually, it must have been like 2014, so a couple years later. But um, it was relatively new at that time, and even at the time then, it was still, it still was not recognized as a cult classic, but it was kind of making its way to where it is now, like where in a way, it's a movie that it's kind of a need to know, sort of like, you found out from your friend about it and they watch it and they'll either like it or they'll dislike it because, like I said, it's a very divisive movie. It's Group A will love it, Group B will just say it's trash. But like I said, part of it was because of the music, and I didn't know about the music. And then recently I found what this music was, and I was able to put two and two together, and then now I kind of appreciate like what the story of this genre is, and the that started with Drive, with Kavinsky, kind of producing his like those preliminary albums, and I think he's actually they recognize him as sort of the grandfather, the godfather of synthwave, which yeah, I would definitely agree. He created a movie, which the signature track for the movie, which is called Night Call by Kavinsky, arguably is actually more famous than the movie. I mean, and I guess my background is film, so I obviously enjoy. Like I wouldn't say that the song. I'll listen to the song by itself, but every time I listen to the song, I get flashbacks to the movie, especially like the really sweet like beginning scene, like where he's driving through the city, which is one of the best scenes like in film ever, in my opinion. Um, I can't disconnect the two, but I could see why it would be more popular because it's a really good song. Um, um, because yeah, and then another track in it, which is Electric Youth, Real Hero, which is it plays like halfway through the movie, and I'm checking that name of that song because I butchered it. I butchered it on another episode of mine, and I got called out for it, so I don't want to do that again. But yeah, it's Electric Youth. Real. I think I called it Real Human Being, which yeah, that's like the main lyric, but that's not the name. Um, yeah, A Real Hero. Yeah, so from the original Drive soundtrack. But yeah, that one's actually really good too. It's kind of a slower. Actually, all the songs. Like the way I see it is like the movie has three distinctive movements. The first one is Kavinsky Night Call. That's the first half, and then the I guess like the middle would be Desires Under Your Spell, which it's another synth wave. It's a different style, but it's it's still synth wave. And then a real human, or I was about to do it again. A real hero is definitely the third movement because that comes in about not quite two-thirds of the movie through, but almost there. And then at the end, at the very end, he's driving out, and that's the song that's playing that kind of rolls into the or transitions into the credits. But I actually I don't remember. I think I might have already spoiled the movie with all the times I've talked about it. And I might as well call this the Drive podcast because every episode that I'm doing goes back to it. But you got your favorite things, and somehow that always makes its way through. And this is very much like a film media type podcast on the whole. Obviously, there's more to it, but that's what I do on the majority of time. But yeah, that's it's really awesome to know that one of your favorite just pieces of art, it's like linked to this genre, which is in itself art. It's something that's very very interesting. It might not necessarily be for everyone. I mean, like if people, I guess to begin with, if you don't already like the 80s synth style, like I was saying, like Hall and Oates, Phil Collins, Genesis, like the Police, any of like those types of sort of more synthy sounds in bands, you might not necessarily like this because this is very much just an updated version of that. It's more, I guess, because of the technology that we have now, they can go in more directions, uh, and it's like an interesting sound. But I guess if you don't like that already, you may not like this, but you might actually because, like I said, just that update might be it might it might tickle your fancy in in a matter of speaking for another reason. But yeah, I'd recommend people to go give this one a try. Go check out these songs. Like I said, anything, and I'm gonna link as many as I can remember to link at the bottom. But like I said, any of the artists' songs like La Cassette, Perturbator, Power Glove, Jordan F, uh, Hotline Miami, Tommy, uh, Crockett, um, just any of those guys or girls, would be worth checking out their work, and because they really, put in time to it. And what's awesome is that a lot of these people, a lot of these indie creators have actually donated, or maybe not donated is not the right word, but like they partnered with a lot of like sort of like YouTube curators to actually get their music out. Because one thing that I kind of skipped over is that synthwave has like a very signature art style, I guess, of video that kind of goes with it. And actually, like what you'll find, and right now I'm actually gonna pull up some of those pages so I can get these names right. But I think it's Nero 77. Yeah, like Nero 77. They kind of are dedicated to displaying these tracks, and what they do is they mix them with like either anime or movies of of a lot of different kinds. Like I'm looking at their catalog right now, and they like for example, like Miami Nights 1984. It's mixed together with this kind of, I don't want to say obscure. I didn't know about it. Actually, I watched this song, and then I kind of thought what they were showing was cool, so I watched it. But I think it's called Gogo 13. It's a Japanese anime. Um, I guess it's called, yeah, Gogo 13. If you guys want to go check it out, just fair warning. It's I wasn't expecting it when I looked. I just thought, oh yeah, this looks pretty cool. This is gonna be just an anime. It's a very adult anime. It has a lot of just kind of like um just over the top violence. It's pretty sexual. Almost to the point sometimes like where it's kind of twisted. I, I didn't really know what I was getting into, and then I watched it. It's not really one that I rewatch. It just like when I see it in the music video, it just looks a lot cooler than what it actually was. Like it did have some kind of interesting fight scenes, I'll say, but it's like basically the basically I would what I would sum it up to is he kills all the guys and he sleeps with all the girls. That's like what it comes down to. It just in one sentence. Um, oh, another track that I didn't mention, but LazerHawk, King of the Streets. They mix it with the movie. It has um Aragon, the guy that played Aragon. What's his name? Wait. Where I look this up right now. This actually, and this is a really good actor. He came out in Green Book with I'm forgetting the other guy's name too, but yeah. It's like I want Google to tell me what I want Google to tell me, but I'm not searching for it right, so I can't find it. Viggo Mortensen, yeah, Viggo Mortensen is his name, and the movie. I put Viggo Mortensen driver movie, and it gave me Green Book, which yeah, he's driving in that movie, but that's not the one that I'm trying to find because he's driving like a white um it's like driving a white like supercar, or not supercar but muscle car, and it gave me Green Book again. Dang. We're having trouble here, guys. And I knew the name of this movie too. I'm drawing a blank. It's well, anyways, we're gonna skip because I'm staying too long on this subject. But yeah, it's an older movie, and I know it's a remake of one in the 70s. This one was remade, I think, like in the late 80s. But yeah, he's like driving to it, and it totally fits the feel. That's actually something that I would commend Nero 77. Like they know what movies to pick. Like when I mentioned earlier, this one's not necessarily on Nero 77, but like the radio "Secret to My Success" remix of the La Cassette track. What they do is they put the radio track, and they actually use the movie "Secret to My Success" that's starring Michael J. Fox from the mid 80s. I want to say it's like 1985. And the original radio, I feel like the original radio track is actually not as good, but then they used like that older kind of more of the legitimate older 80s sound, and then they kind of synth waved it, and they find a really good mix there that's actually really good. Miami Nights 1984 Early Summer. Um, I called it Early Summer Drive, but it's actually called Early Summer. Um, It's they use Scarface kind of intermixed with a lot of other like sort of just kind of 80s visuals. Scarface, if you guys have never seen Scarface, is another movie I would recommend you guys to go watch. It's really good. Oh yeah, Lifelike So Electric. That's another, must hear one. That's kind of more of a fast-paced, kind of repetitive type track. It's like just animated, sort of like neon light type flashing space visuals and stuff like that. Tommy's Flyin. They use the original Miami Vice kind of intercut with other things. It was mostly Miami Vice. Crockett Searching. Even their namesake is one of the main characters, Crockett. It's all Miami Vice. There's LazerHawk, Fight to the Top. They use Jacques Van Damme movies from the 80s. They, which actually, yeah, I'm not gonna say that because some people think those are like the best movies ever made or anything like that. I appreciate certain movies from the 80s. Like I well I don't think because John Claude Van Damme is not a bad actor. He's actually a good actor. If you've that he has his self-titled sort of like mockumentary, which I think is called JCVD, and there he does like a 10-minute monologue about like it's a meta monologue because he's talking about the fact that at the end of or at this point in his career, like he hasn't really amounted to anything that's like super special. It just kind of all like just this over the top action stuff, and he kind of like takes an introspective look into like what his life has become, as at that point. But yeah, like I guess of his original set of movies, I don't know quite what it is because it's not realistic by any means. I guess just because of they kind of captured, which I talked about a little bit of this in episode 6 of the first season, where we talked about the jiu-jitsu and sort of like the MMA world and sort of a little bit of history about that. Just the Hickson Gracie like run that he had at the 1995 Valetudo. They kind of captured like the mystical side of martial arts, which at that point it was still prominent, but it was like soon to die. I would say that the like that's why I kind of recommended in that other episode, like if you guys haven't seen it, to go watch the movie Choke or the documentary Choke, because I feel like that, even though because that was real, I mean that was like full contact, no holds bar combat, or not quite no holds bar, because yeah, there was Hickson actually talks about the fact that yeah, there are certain things in there that they would you would have to be able to do in order for it to be truly no holds bar. But he like they that documentary captured, I think, like the very last like sentiments of like the metaphysical, sort of like spiritual, sort of or not holistic, that's not the right word, but yeah, like the magical side of martial arts, which was like pretty much dying out, because at that point that's when you had UFC coming in, and now that's like the premier, I would say, the premier like mode of combat sports that you can consume. But it's very real now. I mean, there's more rules than there used to be, but it's very real. It's not, you don't have people for the most part doing the types of like or you don't see like the one style fighters that you saw even into like the first UFCs, because now like if you're like if you're caught in the ring only knowing one thing, even if you're a master at it, like you won't survive. I mean, I personally, I might be biased because that's what I practice as a sport and kind of just something to help improve myself. Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I feel like Brazilian jiu-jitsu is probably the most complete individual martial art that you can have. But then again, like if that's all that you have in your game, like you're pretty limited versus someone that kind of knows other things. I would feel personally more comfortable like knowing at least pretty solid jiu-jitsu and then pretty solid boxing. At least that way you have some striking, because you might be a little bit a little bit outclassed if you don't know how to fight on your feet. Cause yeah, like you can take it to the ground and everything, but you never know. Like in the street, someone might have a knife, someone might have something else that they can pull on you, and that's not like a guaranteed like game over, but you have to be way more careful. Cause in that case, like what's jujitsu's strength about like closing the gap kind of becomes his weakness too, because you get stabbed in your back while you're performing some like trying to move into position, and that could easily be it. But we're getting way off topic here, but but yeah, like going back, circling back to what we are talking about, looking through here at Nero 77. One of my favorite tracks, like, oh my god, this song, when I heard it the first time, like, I'm gonna there's a movie that I want to write that's going to be very based in synthwave, and this is going to be like, if I can get the rights to it, in the future, God willing, this is probably going to be the theme song. It's so good. Like I mean, I heard it the original version, and it's Thomas Barrandon's "The Quiet Earth." On Nero 77, they have it mixed like with it's like a couple science fiction movies, and then um, they like, I think the majority of it is actually from 2001, Space Odyssey, and it's like it's mixed so well together, because it's like they at the end, like when you see like the scene in 2001, like where like apes actually figure out like that they're able to manipulate tools, and then like he's grabbing like the big like bone, and like he's like smashing the other ones, and then like as the song's kind of crescendoing to the end, like you see him breaking the bones, and then he's figuring out they all like now like the apes are gonna rule. And at almost at the very end, like that's like the scene like where he throws the bone in the air, and then it transitions to the ship, and it just fits so perfectly. Like it's wow. Like that, I really think, yeah, that's actually another thing about synthwave that's kind of part of it. I feel like if this were not part of it, it would not be as strong as it is. Kind of like the visual factor. Yeah, synthwave is very pleasing and pleasurable to your ear, but when you watch it, like in a video form, like with the movie that they've picked that kind of captures um, the emotion of the song, like it's almost just as good. Um, oh, sorry, it's kind of it's got a funny text here. We might cut this, but we'll see. Um, ugh, um, they yeah, it's just it's a genre in its own. I really think that it's gonna blow up pretty soon because it's awesome. I think that this is a really good alternative to what we have now on the radio. I kind of wish that the radio actually would represent a lot more of what's out there. Cause no, I mean, don't get me wrong. I like my radio music. Like I don't like all of it. I would say I don't like a majority of it. Um, I find myself, turning to Pandora and to Spotify and to iHeartRadio, and kind of like the playlists that I've cultivated from the music that I like, and it's very broad. Like I like indie rock, I like this synthwave, I like EDM, I like rap, and I have playlists for all of it, but a lot of it tends to be from stuff that's already been made. Like a lot of the newer stuff, it's kind of hit or miss. But yeah, every now and then you get a gem, which like yeah, definitely in the future, we'll be rocking out, with and then like the to it, and the kids will be like, "Hey, what's this?" And I'll be like, "Hey, flashback to 2019 college, when we were in college." So yeah, that's gonna be a interesting thing in about 20 years. Whew, to think about that, that's crazy. Like to think, yeah, it's like I we're going off topic again, but I guess just a quick thing about that, just like the songs that I've discovered through my parents and through people that actually lived through the 80s and in that time, and finding out, yeah, it's pretty good. But to think that the music that we have now and the music that like there's certain songs that came out in like the early 2000s and stuff like that, like that will be like the classics of the next couple of decades. Songs like like Rihanna's Disturbia, Drake's Best I Ever Had. What's another one? it's like the Soldier Boy songs they were coming out back in the day. Like, I just at work I just heard one of those today, and like coworker of mine told me like she used to do like that sort that Soldier Boy dance a bunch back in the day, and I was like, yeah, that was the shit back in the day. But oh wow, reminiscing and thinking about the future. That'll be kind of interesting. But yeah, yeah, synthwave's good. Synthwave is a good genre, and I recommend people to go check it out. Like I said, I'm gonna link as many as I can at the bottom, and yeah, this might be a little short, actually, a little shorter than what I thought. But I think I kind of covered it. Like I said, this is kind of something that's relatively new that's about to jump off. I'd give it at least, within the next 5 years, it's going to jump off. People will know about it. And maybe in the future, when that happens, I just slap the laptop here. But, and when that happens, then we'll come back and talk more. But, guys, I want to thank you for tuning in. For the people that tune in, this is season 2, episode 1. And I got 2 more on deck that I'm working on in different stages of production. Those should be coming out relatively soon. This one today is Thursday the 16th, and I see this actually being done maybe by tomorrow because it's actually kind of short. So I'll release it, and if you guys enjoy it, like, subscribe, comment, email me, Instagram message me, go check out the Patreon if you guys so choose. And yeah, thanks again. I want to wish everyone a early summer. Hey, plugging the song. Bye. I'm scrolling here because at the very top of the list, uh, it's early summer. Bye. Yeah, it's Miami Nights, 1984. Yeah, but wishing everyone an early summer, and we're getting close to that time, guys. That nice vacation time. I'm pretty hyped. The film program's gonna pick up a little bit in the last couple of weeks, but that's how it is. It's always the calm before the storm, and the storm should be pretty short. So we're getting there, and I want to wish everyone well. For anything that's going on in your guys' lives, I hope that you can find the resources and the help from the people around you. Don't ever be afraid to ask for help. I know I'm someone that has issues doing with that sometimes, but I know when I've gone out and and done it, it's something that's helped me. So don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it. Um, if you believe in prayer, pray. But yeah, I hope everything that is going on in your lives is well. And if it's not, I hope that the brighter day is just coming up soon. So yeah, guys, take care. Thanks again, and I'll catch you next time.